So by now, if humanity builds these artefacts and these artefacts take a sufficiently advanced form, then who's to say that these machines, these artefacts, one day can look on humanity as a kind of pest?
We need to look at biodigital convergence. Why biodigital convergence? Because hydrogels, transhumanism, cyborgism, speciesism is all related to this. What we're seeing, we need to understand what technology is, and we can't yet understand what it is, where it comes from. Is technology something that's living? Is it conscious? Is it an attack? Which realm does it come from? Which dimension does it come from? And so what we're seeing is that technology in one way or another is pulling us into it. We don't know if, for instance, nature or we don't know if technology is actually an extension of nature or is an extension of ourselves. Perhaps technology is something that's natural. Perhaps nature built technology or gives us the permission to build technology. But what I do know is that if we go into the biodigital convergence without consciousness, we're going to have problems. In a time where we can decide where we want to go. Are we going to use technology for something holistic, or are we going to use technology to control us? And the way that we're going with the government that we're having, because the government, because the leaders, because the scientists, they're developing this technology and allowing it into the society, because the society doesn't allow or doesn't promote consciousness, and the consciousness and the science has been split. In the past, science and consciousness were together, or mysticism and consciousness were together. They separated in the 1800s when the alchemists were taken out of science. What we're going to find is that we're going to go down some very difficult paths. So what I want to do is I want to, without being biased towards biodigital convergence, whether it's good or it's bad, I'm going to go through some stuff with you. And I don't think that we actually have a choice. I don't think that we have a choice whether we want to or we don't want to be or have biodigital convergence. And I'll play you a video by Professor Hugo de Garis.
So then the politics will start. Right? People will start taking... They'll no longer consider this question of, should human beings become number 2 species on the planet. That will no longer be a science fiction type question. It will become more and more real. So those people in favour of building these godlike creatures, these artefacts, I call them cosmists. Okay, now the other group are opposed to humanity building these artefacts, and their primary motive will be fear. I mean, think about it. I mean, I'll make an analogy. Every time I bang my hand on this table, I'm probably killing a lot of bacteria, right? Probably. But as a human being, I don't care. Right? These bacteria are so inferior, so insignificant relative to me as a human being with my, 100 trillion cells, right? Bacteria, 1 cell. I don't care. They're just nothing to me, insignificant. So, by analogy, if humanity builds these artefacts, and these artefacts take a sufficiently advanced form, trillions or trillions or whatever, times the superior capacities compared to human beings, human brains, then who's to say that these machines, these artefacts, one day can look on humanity as a kind of pest?
A bit later on, which talks about the Terrans and the Cosmists and the bifurcation in humanity, where humanity will take 2 different paths. But if you listen to, for instance, Christopher Barnett, perhaps it won't even be possible, because in order to digitize the body, you might have smart dust, which you just breathe in and it will just start to make changes in your body, and you won't have a choice whether to be natural. You're just going to be pushed to be converging with digital and technological enterprises. And so the only real choice that we have is if we want the biodigital convergence to be something which is conscious or something which is not conscious.
This time, for these reasons, I strongly suspect that future brain-computer interfaces will be organic. The human brain is, after all, an electrochemical computer, and hence the most suitable technology to interface with it is also likely to be biological. Given current developments in synthetic biology, by the 2040s it may well be possible to create organic brain implants which will rely on direct wetware-to-wetware connectivity and which will be able to communicate wirelessly with inorganic computers. In time, I further predict that organic brain-computer interfaces will not need to be surgically implanted. Instead, future AIs will figure out how to genetically reprogram the human body to grow its own brain augmentations. We do, after all, already grow our own brains. So, with a genetic helping hand, there's no reason we should not be able to manufacture organic additions to our brains internally and without the need for implant surgery. Sometime in the 2050s, it may be possible for us to take a pill or have an injection or maybe inhale a chemical vapour that will cause us to ingest into our bodies the synthetic genetic material required to trigger an organic digital upgrade. Such material would cause us to grow new bodily organs, the brain implants, which would augment our mental capabilities, but which would also probably give us something like an organic Wi-Fi chip, so that we could communicate wirelessly with computers and the internet.
And we might end up having new religions, new philosophies, new spiritualities based on biodigital convergence. The decision of what biodigital you want in your body may actually help consciousness. For instance, if your mind, if you can, we all want transhumanism to make us live longer and to have better memories and to be more intelligent, but there's nothing to do with being more conscious. The transhumanists keep putting forward the idea that knowledge is going to be conscious. Knowledge is going to be about bringing wisdom. Wisdom and consciousness may be the same thing, but they're certainly different from knowledge. And so if we keep mixing up knowledge and wisdom, we're going to end up in a very difficult world. Remember, I'm not a Christian, but the Bible does put forward some very interesting stories. The tree of knowledge was what took us out of the Garden of Eden. It wasn't the tree of wisdom. It wasn't the tree of truth. It was the tree of knowledge. And what the digital age brings us is knowledge. It brings us information. And so we need to have wisdom allocated, or we need wisdom to be united with the technology in order to make sure that we've got a conscious path in front of us. Exploring biodigital convergence. The forward. In the coming years, biodigital technology could be woven into our lives in the way that digital technologies are now. What this means is that if they can get the digital technologies into our body, the biodigital technologies are basically technologies which I believe can change the biology within us. And that is already being done through CRISPR-Cas9, which is in a syringe which they're putting in your arm in order to get rid of certain nasty flu-like viruses. Biology and digital systems are converging and could change the way we work, live, and even evolve as a species. So they're talking about the evolution as a species. We think that we're a species, or we are a species as humans, but they're talking about evolving our species. That means that evolution is no longer for the natural process or for God's will or for Earth's will. It's now being taken on by humans. Humans are going to become the gods, and we are going to be in charge of our own evolution. More than a technological change, this biodigital convergence may transform the way we understand ourselves and cause us to redefine what we consider human or natural. Now, this is already being done in the schools. If you look at, for instance, the transgender thing that's going on at schools, the children are already starting to redefine what they believe is their sexuality, which is a part of humanity. So they're trying to consider and redefine what is human. No longer do we have gay and straight. We now have gender fluid, which means that a man in a woman's body that thinks they're a woman, or a man in a woman's body that thinks they're a man, etc., etc., etc. So this is being done in a very aggressive way. So if it is natural for us to transform, it has to be done in a conscious and holistic way. But the way it's being done is very aggressive, because if you want a transformation or evolution of the human, it must be done without attacking the young children at school and doing it under the guise of transsexual evolution or transsexualism. Biodigital convergence may profoundly impact our economy, our ecosystems, and our society. Well, that's already been done with the C19. The C19, which is bringing in, for instance, hydrogels. The hydrogels have these lipid materials inside them, which are nanotechnology. The nanotechnology has CRISPR-Cas9. That is changing our genetics. And that's so the whole C19 is changing or has changed our economy. It's changed our ecosystems. You can go to certain places where tourists go and there's no tourism. The water's cleaned up. It's changing our society. The way business is done, the way that we relate to each other has also changed. Being prepared to support it while managing its risks with care and sensitivity will shape the way we navigate social and ethical considerations, as well as guide policy and governance conversations. Being prepared to support it, being prepared to support this new economy, ecosystem and society is being done now with the lockdowns. We need to understand that whatever this C19 is, push that aside, whether it exists or it doesn't exist, whether it's bad, whether it's good, whether it's very dangerous or not dangerous. Don't look at that. Look at what it's doing. What it's doing is it's preparing a new society, it's preparing a new industrial revolution, it's preparing the fourth industrial revolution, it's preparing the Great Reset. Digital technologies and biological systems are beginning to combine and merge in ways that could be profoundly disruptive to our assumptions about society, the economy, and our bodies. We call this biodigital convergence. So one of the assumptions that humans had was to do with sexuality. So with this new ideology coming in, for instance, about our bodies, the economy and our bodies, for instance, we have people that wish to cut bits of their body off, which are called artists. They're people that have body dysmorphia. They wish to change their face, they wish to change their arms, they wish to put new things in. So this was sort of done with photographs of women being put on boys' magazines. And so women had a problem or an issue with their bodies. And then in sort of the 2000s, the late 1990s, the 2000s, 2010, it started to affect the boys. Anorexia was no longer something for girls, it was something for boys. So after you attacked women's bodies, you then attacked men's bodies. Tattoos started to come in. Tattoos were coming in the late 1990s and the 2000s. And then once the tattoos you had body modification. And once the body modification had been going on a little while, then you went into gender fluidity, which is now attacking children. It's always about attacking children whilst they're at schools. And that's to change the idea of your body. And so now that we had the body dysmorphia and the body modification coming in, now we've got hydrogels which are going into the body and which are going to have CRISPR-Cas9 technology, which is DNA and gene editing. And so we're not changing the outside of our bodies, which we've been doing since the 1990s. We're actually starting to change the inside of our bodies. And what this is about coming to terms to accepting these changes that are happening. Now, to change the internals of your body, no one's going to do that. We only care about the outside of our body. So we basically tell young children that they have to be something. And then we tell them what they've got to do and what they've got to buy. But you can't really tell anybody what to do with the inside of your body unless you have an enemy. And that enemy has come in the form of C19. So when this enemy comes, what you say is that, look, it's not about gaining boys or gaining ego or looking better. What it is about protecting yourself and other people. So you've got to change the things, the proteins, the genetics inside of your body in order to be safe. And no one can see what's going on, so what's the problem? But this is going to be layered up for the future. 3 ways biodigital convergence is emerging. Full physical integration of biological and digital entities. Now that's going to be done through Elon Musk and Neuralink. Co-evolution of biological and digital technologies. Conceptual convergence of biological and digital systems. Now the co-evolution of biological and digital technologies, if you can create a world where people can't get work unless they have to upgrade themselves through biological technologies, then you're going to co-evolve with people that because they want to work and they want money because the society's been set up that way, you're going to have to live with people that have modified themselves. Also, if we have wars in the future, and they're setting up wars now, they're setting up wars with Russia and they're setting up wars with China, and they're bringing in the super soldier, the universal soldier. The universal soldier was something which was put forward in the late 1980s. And the universal soldier is basically a cyborg. If you can generate a war, create a war, or build up animosity towards another country, and then sell to the public that the only way in order to defend your country is by creating super soldiers, and that's been the idea of super soldier has been planted inside of us through Hollywood and X-Men. So in the future, it's only going to be possible to defend your country if you allow X-Men soldiers, universal soldiers, modified soldiers to defend you. And people will start to then become accustomed to seeing these new enhanced people. Those people after the war, they will then come back into society. They might have those technologies taken out of them or whatever. But you're also going to get, for instance, the rich people. The rich people are going to want to keep their children within the upper class or the upper middle class. Already they send their children to schools that are very expensive in order to get ahead, to get into universities. They spend extra money on their children for extracurricular activities to get their children better accustomed to the world. And it won't be too long before rich parents will want to put technologies into the child so that that child can maintain the lead in society. So if you keep the class system will push parents to genetically modify their children or to put digital technologies into the children in order for the children to do better. Even if you have athletes are always going to cheat by putting drugs into their systems in order to run faster. You have rich people are going to have access to the technologies, and they're going to put the technologies into their system even if it's illegal. Biodigital convergence is opening up striking new ways to change human beings, our bodies, minds, and behaviors. Change will create other organisms. That means that we're going to start creating different types of life. Alter ecosystems, sense, store, process, transmit information, manage biological innovation, structure, manage production and supply chains. Well, if you can manage the supply chains and you can manage the food, then you can tell people what they have to do, because they won't be able to eat unless they conform. I wonder if you look at the Ice Age farmer, the Ice Age farmer is looking quite in depth at the control over the food lines. That if you can control the food, then you're going to be able to control the population. Initial policy relevant questions. Would education and training systems need to be adapted to address potential skills gaps? Well, if you look at some of my prior videos, I've already talked about specialized education. What a specialized education is going to be is education without a teacher. The teacher's going to go. The teacher is just a non-entity. We don't need them anymore. They're like taxi drivers. They're like pilots. We don't actually need them in society. What we're going to do is we're going to have children plugged into computers. The AI, the artificial intelligence, is going to look at the children and it's going to tell the child what they can become, what they're good at. And it's also going to bring lots of different education, which is specific to the child, for the child to learn. So the children are going to become products of the system. The system won't be a product of the child. We will be trained to further enhance the system by hyper-specialized education. What is needed to protect citizen security in the biodigital world? Well, in the biodigital world, there's not going to be security, there's not going to be privacy, because the computers are going to know you better than yourselves. If you've got smart dust and you've got technologies inside you, they'll know when you're having sex, what you're eating, what you're listening to, and how you react. So for instance, if you can get technology into your system and it can regulate, or it can look at the regulation of your heart and your secretion of sweat, and then it monitors you as you look at data or information. So for instance, you're looking at a picture of Donald Trump and it can monitor your body, and then you look at a picture of Joe Biden and then it monitors your body. It's going to be able to see which person you prefer. When you look at Trump, you get angry. When you look at Biden, you get less angry. So it will know what types of things you react to better than what you know what you react to. And that's very dangerous, because if you have a system that knows you better than you know yourself, it can then manipulate you without you knowing what's going on. In the same way that we manipulate animals without the animal really knowing what's going on, we're going to have this AI God manipulating us because we don't realize what's going on. And in fact, to animals, humans are probably gods, and AI to humans, AI would probably be a god as well. So biodigital convergence is the interactive combination, sometimes to the point of merging of digital and biological technologies and systems. Okay, full physical integration of biological and digital entities. This means that there is not going to be the old human. It's going to be human 2.0. Digital technology can be embedded in organisms, and biological components can exist as part of digital technologies. So life will be technology with the brain, and it will be the brain with technology. So what's the difference between getting a chip and putting it in your brain, where you've got technology put into the human body, or if you take the brain out of the human body and you put it into technology? What's the difference? They're still sentient life forms, and so you have to get used to both coming along. The physical meshing, manipulation, and merging of the biological and digital are creating new hybrid forms of life and technology, each functioning in the tangible world, often with heightened capabilities. What this is saying then, the new hybrid forms of life and technology, what it's saying is that we're going to have different life forms. Imagine a world where you've got Neanderthal, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, and Homo florens or florensis. All of these different humans, perhaps they could speak in one way or another, but they're different types of life forms. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to start categorizing life forms. You know, which one is higher than which one? At the moment, a cat is lower than a human. A mouse is lower than a cat. A worm is lower than a mouse. You sort of got mouse, you sort of got worm, mouse, cat, orangutan, human. Well, the only reason we categorize those in a hierarchy is because of intelligence, not because of consciousness. And we sort of, in the past, have always regulated consciousness to intelligence. We sort of combine the two together as a measuring stick. But what happens if you create a hybrid form, a new hybrid form of life? And, you know, what a human is to that new hybrid form is what a cat is to a human. So are you going to say that the new enhanced hybrid form has a much more, has more authority to live than someone that has less intelligence, therefore perhaps has less consciousness? What you're seeing at the moment is this drive to stop eating meat. And I think the two are related. You've got Bill Gates, which is trying to build synthetic meat. We're trying to buy up lots of farmland so that, or those that are buying up farmland in order to stop the licensing of growing animals. And there's this push towards veganism and vegetarianism, which isn't a bad thing. But what I think it is that if as a human, we think that we have the authority to treat, kill, torture and eat a lower life form, then what do you think is going to happen if you've got a much higher life form and it looks at us humans? That would that higher life form have permission to treat us as we treat cattle? So if we don't want to be treated in the same way as cattle is by a higher life form, then we need to change how we deal with other life forms at the moment. And I think that that's got something to do with what's going on at the moment. Robotics and biological brains and biological bodies with digital brains already exist, as do human computer and brain machine interfaces. The medical use of digital devices in humans, as well as digital manipulated insects such as drone dragonflies and surveillance locusts, are examples of digital technology being combined with biological entities. What they're saying is that what we're doing is we're starting to mix the digital and the biological with dragonflies, with locusts, with animals, so that we can start becoming used to it before we start applying it to humans, which is going to be done, I would have thought, through war, or it's going to be done through business, or it's going to be done through some rebel scientist. But the authority to do it, I would have thought, is going to come through war. And then with all the damaged people that have emanated from those wars, there'll be then medical license in order to put those people onto cyborg lists in order to help them adapt back into social life through these new technologies, and then people in the normal society will see these new humans coming back from war with these enhanced digital or mechanical bodies, and we're going to start accepting it. So this is the preparation. This is the little candy food that we're being given, like we give pets to try to make the pet, you know, happy before we take the pet to the dentist or the doctor or the vet. So this is just the these are just the smarties. By tapping into the nervous systems and manipulating neurons, tech can be added to an organism to alter its function and purpose. New human bodies and new senses of identity could arise as the convergence continues. Again, I go back to the transgender issue with children. The new human bodies, when a child who's a girl then becomes a boy, this is a new body that she's taking over. She's taking over a new identity, or he's taking over a new identity if it's in the opposite way. So it's starting to bleed, or we're starting to put into the new human consciousness through school and through children the new ideas of having different bodies and new identities through gender fluidity. And that's what I believe is going on here. Co-evolution of biological and digital technologies. This type of biodigital convergence emerges when advances in one domain generate major advances in the other. The co-evolution of biological and digital sciences and technologies enables progress in each domain that would be impossible otherwise. This would lead to biological and digital technologies that are developed as integrated or complementary systems. Complex living systems, bacteria, fungi, plants, and animal life, including humans, are increasingly subject to examination and understanding by digital tools and applications such as machine learning. Well, what I think is that the reason that we're having this scrutiny, this examination of complex living systems, is so that technology can better understand the biological world, so that it can then change the biological world in a way that the biological world believes suits it. So it's a sort of an attack. It's a sort of like the technology and the science telling the biological world, look, you can be better if you do this, but we or they need to understand how our brain works in order to do that. So all of this data harvesting, all of these emails, all of these cameras, all of these devices that are monitoring us that we don't think is particularly important, that we allow these companies to do. This is all the information that the AI is going to need in the future to better understand us. Remember, we're bringing out quantum computers. Quantum computers are data crunching computers. Once you link the AI to the quantum computers, to the data that we're giving for free, you're going to create an ability for this mechanism to understand humans in a way that we've never been understood before. So what they're doing at the moment is they're bringing in the AI, they're harvesting our energy, and they're building the computers at the moment. It's only a matter of time before all three entities come together. For example, gene sequencing combined with artificial intelligence leads to understanding genetic expression, which is then used to alter existing organisms to create organic compounds in new ways, or even entirely synthetic organisms. CRISPR-Cas9, which is the C19 VACCINE approach, and other new gene editing techniques would have been impossible without the evolution of digital technology and bioinformatics. Advances in digital technologies help the advancement of biodigital. So what it's saying is that we need the digital technologies to advance the biodigital, and then the biodigital are going to advance the technologies. So there's going to be some sort of synergy between the two. That's what they're hoping to achieve. There is also a blurring between what is considered natural or organic and what is digital, engineered, or synthetic. So what they want to do is they don't want people to be able to say, okay, that's a normal person, that's a natural person, that's an organic person, that's a digital person, that's a cyborg person. What they want to do is to create as much confusion that you can't separate anything and then vilify one type or one species with another. So if you can mix everything together and everyone's got a bit of everything, it'll be quite difficult then to have a new form of racism or technicism or whatever it's going to be called. For example, biosynthetic vanilla is created using ferulic acid, eugenol, and glucose as substrates, and bacteria, fungi, and yeast as microbial production hosts. Although it does not come from a vanilla plant, under both US and EU food legislations, its production from microbial transformations and natural precursors allows it to be labeled as natural flavoring. It's the same thing with organic, like organic isn't really organic. Organic is allowed a specific or a percentage of chemicals within it. So all of this sort of like organic or natural, it's all going to be frothy. It's going to be difficult to know exactly what these words mean. But at the same time, these words are used as a sort of a magical spell to make people believe that it is actually purely natural. This is from the natural world, which will then, allow people to believe that it's possible to take these things. Now, I think food is going to be something which is very interesting. Again, the Ice Age farmer, he's really good. He's like devoted all of his time to looking at the food and the food production. And it's my belief that the food production wants to be controlled for two reasons. Number one, if you can control the food production, you can control humans. But I also believe that if you want to go into a biodigital technological age, that technology might require specific foods to be eaten. If it requires specific foods to be eaten, then the people in charge need to control the food going into the human body. And the best way to do that is to control the food systems. Also, you might find that the food has a reaction to technology, and some food better accepts technology. Also, if you get rid of certain plant teachers, which is to do with like shamanism, which gives an alternate source of information from the physical world that we exist in, that might stop people from going along with this ideology which is being put forward by the technocrats as we speak. Conceptual convergence of biological and digital systems. A third form of biodigital convergence involves a shift in perspective that could reshape our framing and approach to biological and digital realms, facilitating the blending of the two. Again, it's about blending biology and digital realms, and it's about reshaping your perspective and the way you think. And the best way to do that is through children at school. So watch out what happens at school. Watch Greta Thunberg or Thunberg start to traumatize the youth into believing things which are not exactly true, in order to make the young children rebel against the system that the current adult generation are creating. As we continue to better understand and control the mechanism that underlie biology, we could shift away from vitalism. Now, what is vitalism? Vitalism is very interesting. Vitalism is the belief that living organisms are fundamentally different from non-living entities because they contain some non-physical element or are governed by different principles that are inanimate things. Okay, so this goes back to where is the soul? What's the soul? Do you believe in God? Do you not believe in God? Let's remove God from the argument for a minute, and let's bring in a simulation universe. Now, let's say that we are in a simulation, and we're outside. Our consciousness is outside the simulation, and we have the illusion that we're inside this physical realm. So the body is just basically a vehicle for the soul to express itself and to interact with this physical world. Now, that would mean that it's possible to put the soul into a technological machine, and that technological machine would then hold consciousness. It doesn't mean that our body or the machine is conscious. It means that it's holding some type of consciousness, or something that allows us in a different state that perhaps we're not aware of to interact with the world that our bodies allow us to be in. So, for instance, if you were to upload yourself into a computer to go into a cyber world, what does that mean? Does it mean that then an inanimate object like a computer is no longer conscious if it holds consciousness? So they're starting to change the ideas about what an animate and an inanimate object is. If they can give precedence to an inanimate object, then that would be very good. In the 18th and 19th centuries, vitalism was discussed among biologists between those who felt that the known mechanisms of physics would eventually explain the difference between life and non-life, and vitalists who argued that the process of life could not be reduced to a mechanistic process. Well, if you listen to some of the scientists which are working for Elon Musk, what they think is that God or consciousness can be found through mathematics, can be found through physics. If our minds were basically biological mechanisms and they all worked on some form of coding, biological coding, if that biological coding gave the illusion of consciousness or of a state of being, if you could replicate that consciousness by creating algorithms and then putting it in a supercomputer, then would that not equate to some sort of consciousness? So what this is actually going down, the path that this is going down, is that if they can create a robot that has a super advanced equations, algorithms in its head, then what's the difference between that and our brains, if our brains are just that? Because some physicists, some scientists, they don't believe in consciousness. They don't believe that there's a soul. They don't believe perhaps that we're in a simulation universe. So when we die, that's it, it's finished. Our soul doesn't go to another place, another plane. And if you think of the human body may well be a soul, and it may also have a biological computer. And what the argument is that if in fact the soul doesn't exist, then we are just a biological computer. And if you could digitally create this with a quantum computer, then anything that has been created would then be equal to the biological computer, and then it should therefore have its own rights. Now, this would mean that if you were to destroy or kill a computer that had the same capacity as a human, you'd be committing murder. And that basically sets up in the future to create laws that if you were to attack a computer or a computer system, a network, you would be attacking a consciousness, and that would be the same as murdering. It would be the same as killing, and it would then become a punishable offense. So, for instance, if you were to kill an amoeba or a worm or a mouse, you don't get in trouble for it. But if you were to kill a human, you do. Well, what's the difference between a mouse and a human? Well, it's to do with the capacity of the brain. Well, if you were to give a mouse a human's brain, then if you were to kill the mouse, would you be killing a human? Well, you sort of would be, yes, because even though it's a mouse, what we judge to be a human is our capacity to have compassion and consciousness. So if you could give that to an animal, then that animal would have human-like status. And then if you were to kill that animal, it would be murder. So if you could then give that to a mechanical thing, then that would also be murder as well. So it would also then allow a mechanical object to have a higher precedence than a human object or a human being. So the technological beings would therefore, or could become gods, and it would be a law, it would be against the law to kill anything like that. And that might be something to prevent Luddites. Now, Luddites were people in the past during the Industrial Revolution which attacked farm equipment, agricultural equipment, because they were scared that the technology was taking over their livelihood and their jobs. So if humans, as Hugo de Garis said, you're going to have cosmists and humans, and there may very well be a war between the two. Now, if you were to go and kill the robots, in the past it was always that robots couldn't kill humans, but you know, why? If a robot had the same consciousness as a human, would not a robot be able to defend itself by killing a human in self-defense? So we're opening up. What's happening is we're starting to ask questions to open up a massive discussion about, you know, if it's okay to converge with digital technology. The idea that living and non-living organisms are fundamentally different because they are thought to be governed by different principles. So if you could prove that consciousness could enter into a non-living organism, thus making it living, then the principles that govern humans would then I suppose, govern them. Instead, the idea of biology as having a predictable and digitally manageable characteristics may become increasingly common as a result of living in a biodigital age.